Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me on today's lunchtime stream. Just to jump in, basically. So as some of you will know, I do a lunchtime stream on a Friday just so I can get a few things off my own to-do list. So today's task is to hello, Maurice, in the chat room there. Today's task, if you like, is I want to attempt to update at least one, if not more, of the Cake add-ins that I kind of own out there on the internet. So, as some of you may know, Cake shipped a new version recently. So we did a live stream where we actually pushed out the latest version of Cake, which was 0.33, and the upshot of that was that there was a potentially breaking change in that release of Cake, which means that if you switch to use Cake 0.33 and there are add-ins that don't reference that version of Cake, then you will get some warnings in your output, and it'll warn saying, please contact the add-in maintainer to try and get them to update it. So the upshot of that is I kind of own a few Cake add-ins out there. So I've, for example, Cake.Ember, Cake.VSCode, Cake.Git, Cake.Gem, Cake.TFX. There's a few that I own. So as a result of the change that we made to Cake, there's kind of a ripple effect that needs to happen. So what I'm going to attempt to do in this stream is at least update at least one of those and kind of walk through that process. I did one the other day. So if we go over here and I look at Cake-Contrib and Cake.Twitter, I believe, did I spell that right? No, there are 2 R's on the end of Twitter instead of 1. Cake.Twitter. So I created an issue which was to get this updated to 0.33, and so I did that. So I went through that process. I did that for Cake.Twitter. So Maurice is suggesting that we do Cake.VSCode. Any particular reason that you want that one, Maurice? And looks like Potato Quality has just joined the chat room as well. Hello, Chrissy. How are you doing today? I'm going to start with Cake.Ember because I've kind of already cloned it and things. So if we finish this one, we can jump to Cake.VSCode next, Maurice, if that makes sense. So if I clear my screen here, because there was some red text there. Red text is never really good. Working on a book. Interesting. Anything you can share there, Chrissy, or that sounds interesting. So yeah, I'm going to start with Cake.Ember. So I'm just going to open this in code is where I'll start. Now, oh, look at that. Interesting. SQL DBA tools for SQL Server in a month of lunches. So I'm assuming that that's a Manning book then. Cool. I will look forward to checking that out. So the kind of a good thing about Cake add-in, once it's kind of been built, absolutely, I love Manning too. I've been lucky enough to do a couple of technical editor roles for Manning, so I kind of reading the book as it's being written by someone obviously smarter than I am. I get to read it and kind of provide feedback, so it's a really interesting process to work through with Manning to do that. So yeah, the thing about a Cake add-in, once you've kind of written it and it works, there's very little that needs to be updated to it between releases. So unless the potentially breaking change in Cake impacts your alias or the aliases that you've got within your add-in, there's actually not much that needs to be updated. So in this case, what I'm expecting is that I'm going to have to update this to 33, so this is my reference to Cake.core within this add-in. So I'm expecting to have to update that. And if there's a test project for Ember Test, there is, then in this CS proj, I'm expecting to have to update these, and I'm expecting to have to update this, right, to a 3 as well. So what I should have done, so that I can track all of this and what I'm doing, if I go back over here to Chrome, I'm going to go in here and create a new issue. So I'm going to create an issue and say update to cake 0330. And then I'm going to add a label onto that, which is improvement, and I'm going to assign that to a milestone. Well, the last milestone was 030, so let's create a new one, which is 040. And let's go ahead and create that. So now that I've done that, I can then work through my own process. So currently I am on the develop branch. So I'm going to do a git checkout of a feature, git checkout -b of a feature branch. And I'm going to call that the same as the issue that I just created, which is there. And I'm going to take that branch from the develop. So now I'm on a branch that I can then work on, and if I need to switch between the two, that's kind of the process that I follow. So I've got that issue. So if I go over here, and so those two things have changed, and I noticed one other thing that is going to need to change, that in terms of the version of Cake that I'm using to build this add-in, I'm actually on an older version here. So I'm going to change this to be 32. Now, I'm updating the add-in itself to use Cake.33, but I'm using 32 of Cake to do the actual build. Now, that might seem a little bit chicken before the egg, or however you want to put that across. Yeah, I'll come back to that in a second, Matthias. So that might seem a little bit backwards, because why are you updating the add-in to reference 33 but only use 32 to do the build? The reason for that is that almost all of my add-ins use this cake.recipe project to do the build. So it contains a bunch of reusable scripts that can be used over and over and over and over again. Now, cake.recipe itself doesn't work with Cake33. So if I try and do the build with Cake33, it will fail for reasons that we'll come on to later. So for now, I'm going to do the build of this add-in using 32, if not 32.1, which is what Matthias is suggesting in the chat room there. So let's just change that to 32.1. So I'm going to use that to do the build, but the add-in itself is going to reference 033. And that's perfectly valid. There's no reason you can't do that. So with those two things done, I should be in a position to run the build. So if I go over here and I run the build that we've got set up, then hopefully what's going to happen is that Cake.recipe is going to download Cake and all the add-ins and things that it needs to do the build. We'll probably see some of the errors that we're actually trying to fix. So all of these, oh, that's new. Package. Ooh. That's interesting. That must be NuGet giving me that information based on the signatures that are associated with the add-ins. So yeah, these those warnings that you saw flying past there were probably related to the problem I'm trying to fix, because some of those add-ins are not referencing the correct version of Cake, or the latest version of Cake, so it causes a problem. It shows those warnings. Now, those warnings don't prevent the build from working, but it's a warning. Some people don't like warnings in their build logs. So if this runs through, then we should be good to go. And that's really all we need to do. So all we need to do then is commit the change, close the issue, switch to the master branch, push that, and then it should all get pushed out. So let's just wait and see if this build is successful. And if it is, I'm going to make one other slight change. So for those of you that know me, I have a slight OCD for certain things. And one of those is this thing here now. So when I originally started using cake.recipe, I had this concept of a setup.cake file. And it was pointed out to me that I missed the boat and I should have called that a recipe.cake file because I'm using cake.recipe. So in some of my other add-ins, I have actually switched to having this named as recipe.cake rather than setup.cake. So my OCD now means that I have to change this to be recipe.cake rather than setup.cake. So I'll probably do that if the build succeeds the way I want it to, which it didn't. Matthias there on the chat room is I've got my sarcasm filter on, so I think he might be using a slight bit of sarcasm there. What is this saying? If the... Oh, I know exactly what this is. See, and then my machine shuts down. So this is the other thing that I was meant to fix for my stream, but I didn't. I do all of my streaming from a virtual machine. The reason for that is I have over here where you guys can't see, I have OBS running, having doing some things, and then I have a portion of the screen that's dedicated to a VM. And that VM is where I do all my work. The idea being that I can have that all set up the way I want it to. However, the license on that VM has expired. And as a result of that, on Monday's show, we found that the VM reboots every 45 minutes or so. 30, 45 minutes. And I've tried to give it a valid product key, because I have a valid product key for this VM, but it doesn't want to take it. So the upshot of that is that my machine reboots right in the middle of doing stuff, which is not ideal. And I know that Maurice in the chat room tried to suggest something that would fix it, but I think that fix that Maurice had suggested has already been applied, which was to extend the license further. So I just need to fix this VM, but it came round to about 45 minutes before the stream was meant to start, and I realised that I hadn't done that fix. So you can see in the bottom right hand window here is that it's saying that my Windows license has expired. Even though, like I say, I have a valid license, it just won't take it. So hopefully we can move on uninterrupted rather, and get this updated without it rebooting again. So if I go back into GitHub, and we were in the organization, which was Cake-Contrib, and then it was the Cake.Ember one that we were playing with. So that build failed, which we no longer have the output for, so let's run the build again. I'm fairly sure I know what that issue was. So in the chat room while that build's happening, Matthias is saying, just join the Insider program, you'll be able to evaluate longer and be on the edge. So that was the other problem, Matthias. I was on there, but being on the Insider Pro, it meant that there were updates happening all the time. So halfway through a stream, an update would happen, which is not really what I wanted either. Like I said, I'm Microsoft MVP, so I have access to MSDN subs. So for dev and test purposes, which this kind of this is where that fits into, I can use a license key, and I have one, but for some reason the VM's just not taking it, and Maurice is saying that perhaps he might be able to assist, and that would be great. I mean, the other things is I will probably just blow the VM away and rebuild it. I mean, the other part of my setup is that, I think I've shown some of you guys this before, but let's bring it up. So the idea behind this Vagrant box is twofold. One is that I can bring that VM up when I need it and suspend it. The other part is that anyone who wants to kind of follow along with the stream and what I'm doing and the coding that I'm doing can use this Vagrant file. So they can spin up that VM as well and have access to it and work along with me, if you like. So that's kind of the thought process. So I can't just blow it away and rebuild it, and we could do it that way. You have to match the binary with the key. It's super picky. Ooh, okay, I might have to look into that one. And I see Kim's just jumped into the chat room as well. Hello, Kim. Always good to have you here. You haven't really missed much. You just missed my VM rebooting again halfway through the stream. It's a recurring problem that I have on this. So let's try and fix this build. So it's to do with this assembly info.cs, and I'm fairly sure I know what that problem is. So if we go to another Cake add-in, and we have a look over here at one that I know works. So jump over to Cake.Contrib, and we'll jump into Cake.Twitter. Yes, it's exactly that, Kim. The license has indeed expired, and I need to fix it. So if I go in here and have a look at Yes, I believe what I'm going to need is this. It's an additional exclusion that I need to add in to DupFinder in order to make that build work. So let's open up code again and jump in to the setup.cake, which is down here, and let's just do a compare and contrast on the DupFinder. The assembly info.cs file is there, so why is it complaining? So what was that error? The error was blah blah blah. The default external namespace empty input file set terminating. Oh, so it's a different problem. Why is DupFinder not finding any files to... yeah, exactly that. So I booted my VM at about 11:30 just to get things set up, and just about 5 minutes ago it rebooted. So it's around about that sort of time frame. Why is DupFinder not finding any files to JetBrains 2823? And what version of Cake.Recipe are we using? Cake.Recipe will be the latest. So it should be like 467. Yeah. So this was meant to be a quick fix. It's turning out to not be that. So over on Cake.Twitter, I don't think we're doing anything different there. So just running the same build. Test coverage and all of those things are the same, and we're tests. Unable. I'm very confused right now. And it's trying to tell me that it has found stuff, but let's do one other thing. Let's run the build with debug verbosity and see if it outputs anything that could be useful. Verbosity. Now that doesn't fill me with confidence that I have the most recent build.ps1 file, because that was fixed. Let's do something else. Let's make sure that we have the most recent bootstrapper here. And that will have changed stuff in here, which means I'll change this to be set up. And then let's try running that build again. Kim in the chat room is suggesting missing the Visual Studio build files, perhaps. Do you want to elaborate on that one a little bit, Kim, to make sure that we're on the same page? So lots of red text this time because of the actual error, but if we look at what it's actually executing this time, then it's running DupFinder with lots of excludes, which is what we included. The output should be into there, show stats, and then it's doing it on Ember solution. So let's just, hold on. So I'm on a Windows machine and Visual Studio should be installed. I'm just not using it. Oh, look at that. Why is Visual Studio not installed? Oh, I know why. So, funny story. The last time I was setting up this, okay, so let's just explain myself a little bit. So over here in this Vagrant file, there are some setup scripts, and those setup scripts have a install required applications. And that install required applications includes the installation of the community version of Visual Studio and all the associated workflows that are needed for doing all the things that I want to do as part of my stream. Now, the last time my machine got into a point where it was kind of unsalvageable, I was literally just a way to start a stream. And that stream wasn't going to need Visual Studio. So in my local copy of this file, I commented out these and only installed everything else because it would be a lot quicker. So now I don't actually have Visual Studio on this VM. So what Kim's pointing out is that in order for DupFinder to work, it needs to have those MS-Build, all those MS-Build dependencies in play, which is what Visual Studio brings to the table. And what Kim is suggesting there is that we could get away with installing just the build tools. Or, for the purposes of this, because I haven't actually changed any code, I'm just going to say don't run DupFinder. So I can actually pass in another parameter here that is should run DupFinder, and I'm going to set that to false. And I'm going to run the build again. If I can get to PowerShell. And we're not going to use, because I haven't, like I say, I haven't actually changed any code. I've only updated the dependencies of the project. So I can get away with not running DupFinder, but I just want to see that the build completes. So there's a little bit of a hack. It's a good thing that I'm not being recorded with putting that hack in there, because no one's actually going to know what I did. But it's all good. It's all good. You won't tell anyone, right? So let's wait and see if that finishes. Now, inspect code might also fail for the same reasons, but let's see what happens. I wonder. Yeah, that's going to fail too. Oh, no, red text. Okay, fine, beautiful. Okay, so inspect code doesn't have the same dependency on Visual Studio, obviously. So now we're getting further past the build. So if all of this works, we should be in a position to do the commit, submit it, and get it sent out. And Maurice is pointing out that it's just happy that there's no one else in the Cake project in the room. Yeah, it's fine. No one's watching. No one's watching. It just kind of goes to show about the flexibility of the Cake.recipe that system that I'm being used here. I can override these things as required. So the actual change that I'm interested in is this one: the change to the CSproj file, and the change to the CSproj file, and the update of Cake itself to the specific version. So those are the ones that I'm interested in. So let's do a commit for those. So this is going to be updated to latest Cake, and I'm going to go ahead and commit that. And then this one was updated to the latest. So this is a maintenance one. So this is update to latest bootstrapper because for some reason it was using an older one. And that's synergy kicking in and giving me lots of extra characters on my keyboard. Those of you familiar with the stream will know what's going on there. So update to, oh no, hold on, we don't want that, it was just that one. And I'm going to go ahead and commit that one. This change was the addition of that, so we don't actually want that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep that just now actually. So the other change that I spoke about was my OCD. So I'm going to change this away from setup.cake and I'm going to change that to recipe.cake. Now in order for that to work, I'm going to need to update the bootstrapper here to be called recipe.cake. I'm also going to need to change this in the Unix version of the bootstrapper, which is here. So this is going to be recipe.cake as well. So as a quick sanity check, let's just make sure that the build is still working, which it's still running. So that to me is good. Okay, so I can let that run. And then if we look at what's happened here, then this is where I want to take this out now, because this one, I don't want that left in there. So let's take that out. So we've changed setup.cake to recipe.cake, which is what we've done here. And then we've updated both bootstrappers to use recipe.cake rather than setup.cake, which is what we want as well. And then in here, let's do another maintenance commit. This one's not a maintenance commit. This one is a build commit. So this is build. Change setup.cake kale to recipe.cake. Can't spell cake today for some reason. Okay, so let's go ahead and commit those. And okay, so back over here, I'm going to switch back to the develop branch. So git checkout develop. And I'm going to merge all those changes that I put into that feature branch. Oh, we don't have feature. Still need to do that as well. It's called that. So that's me merge those in, and I'm going to push those to the upstream repository. Ooh. Funny story behind this one too. Let's share it. In the last stream, some of you might have seen on Twitter, in my last stream, I inadvertently opened up my environment variables window during the stream, and I had my personal access token for GitHub on clear display to everyone who was watching that stream. So that was a lesson learnt, but the end result of that is I now need to relog into GitHub everywhere that I was using that personal access token, which is this machine. So this is as an example. So I'm going to need to put this in here. And that's probably going to need my two-factor authentication code as well, which I can get from here. Now, I'm never quite sure on whether you can discern any information from knowing what that was, what the personal access token, what the two-factor authentication code is. So just 1 second, and I'll put it in. Okay, so I'm back. So I've now logged into GitHub effectively, which is good. So now if I go over here and look at AppVeyor, the AppVeyor build should be running. If we go over here at Cake-Contrib and we look at the Cake.Ember build, that did push, didn't it? Cake.Ember, yes. Why are we not seeing any running build? It normally puts the running build at the top. Oh, there it goes. Cake.Ember. What are you saying? The access code is 44444, but he does not want to tell you the order. So that Cake.Ember build is running. So if we jump back over to the Cake.Ember project, then we can close that issue that we created because we've effectively finished the work. So there should be a commit associated with that because naming conventions and all that sort of stuff flows through into the commit messages. So I like to see this kind of closing of the loop between this is the issue, here's a commit that went with it. So I'm going to go ahead and close that off. So now, if this build succeeds, so the running on AppVeyor is because it takes my machine out of the question, so CI/CD, make sure that everything builds on a machine that's other than my machine. So we want this build to complete. And if it does, we can go ahead and create the release of this, which will then push everything out. So it will push out the add-in to NuGet. It will announce onto things like Twitter and other places that the add-in is available, and it'll just kind of close that out. So if all of that works successfully, we could in theory attempt in the next 28 minutes to do the cake.vs code one that Maurice spoke about. Or you can watch my machine reboot itself again at some point. So fun times ahead. So that looks like it is progressing nicely. So let's preemptively. So again, I'm on the develop branch now. So I can go ahead and delete that one that I created, which was the feature branch. So feature GH11 can go away, and I can check out a new one, which is going to be release 0304. Is that 04, wasn't it? 04. It was. So, and that's going to come from the develop branch. So let's go ahead and create that. And if everything works the way I want it to, and if we do this and I say target, oh, this won't work because I'll have to update with my latest. Okay, I'm going to have to go into my be right back screen a second because right at the end of the stream. Okay, I'm going to go be right back because I'm going to put my new access token into the environment variable so that I can run this script. And I'm not going to show it on the stream this time. I'm going to switch over to my other scene and then paste it in. So let me just bring that up over on another screen so that I can copy from there. Off that screen. Oop. So let's go into this one, I think. And I should be able to copy it from another project, which is over here. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Copy. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to my screen. Okay, so I've just updated that, but I've also just read Kim's comment in the chat room. Oh, no, that should work, Kim. Where are you seeing an error on Linux? Is it, where are you seeing that? Because that should work on Linux now. That's one of the changes that I've made recently to Cake Recipe so that Git version will work everywhere. Huh. I may have to speak to you about that later because it runs on my Mac. Oh. What Linux? What version of Linux are you using? Because it could be that the... what are they called? The... Sharp zip lib. Sharp zip lib that what it's called? No, it's dev lead. No, Matthias is left. The native assemblies that Git versions uses doesn't support all Linux architectures. So I wonder if that is the problem, because it does run on my Mac nowadays. So let me just kick this off, or type this out while I can. And this is going to be target equals release notes. Synergy. Release notes. So if we go back to here, and so that build succeeded. So that issue is now closed. So now if I run this release notes target, it should generate a set of release notes from all the issues that we're putting into that release. Yeah, so Kim, those are the libraries that I'm referring to. Yes, so those native binaries that Git version uses, and also the likes of Cake.Git use, they don't work on all distros, and that's a known issue. So there's not much that I personally can do about that. So yeah, interesting to know that you're on there, so that if there are, I've got a test subject if we do any changes in that area. So anyway, so that now ran. So what will have happened now is if I go up to Cake.Ember and I look in the releases section, I should have a new draft release, which includes all the issues that were in that 040 milestone. So there's only one of them. So if I go ahead down here and do git checkout of the master branch, then I can do a merge of the changes that are in that release branch, which is going to be 040. And then we can do a push to the upstream, which will kick off a build. And then we can finalize that by editing the release on GitHub, which will tag the repository to say that everything is ready to go. That will then do the push to NuGet and various other places. So let's just wait to see that happen. So that's it running the build there in the master branch. And what we're going to do after that finishes is we're going to edit this release on GitHub, and we're going to click that big green button. That will add a tag. That will then trigger AppVeyor to do other stuff, and then everything goes out the door in a reasonably automated way. So while that's waiting, any questions from anyone in the chat room, feel free to ask. Can't guarantee I'll always have an answer, but I will certainly try my best. There's a couple of new names in the chat room that I recognise. So, is it Arthur? I recognise the name from Git version. So actually, Kim, Arthur or Artur might be able to help with that one. Yes. Do you know if Git version and the native assemblies that it uses, does it work on Arch Linux? I don't have that information at the top of my head, but Artur is maybe in a good position to answer that for you, Kim. So we're now waiting for AppVeyor to kick in. Why is this one queued? Well, it is running. So how are we getting on? We're getting to, if we get a successful build here, then, like I say, we will edit that release and we will publish that release, and then that will send everything out to NuGet. Now, the cake.recipe that I'm using then tries to do other stuff, and that other stuff is to inform people that a release is available. So if we were to go over to Gitter, and one of the chat rooms over here, let me just find out what the full name of it is, so that I don't go to the wrong one. So it's Cake-Contrib lobby. So if I go over here and then look at Cake-Contrib, lobby, then over here, anytime a new Cake.Addin is released, you'll see that it gets announced into this Gitter chat room so that people know about it. The other thing that will happen is that a tweet will be sent out on the Cake-Contrib account. Is that a hyphen there too? I can never remember if it's a hyphen. Or no, it's just I spelled Twitter wrong. Let's try that again. Twitter, Cake-Contrib. Nope. I'll get there yet. There we go. So it'll send out a tweet to anyone that's following that account. So again, we're just announcing to everyone that that's available. So that build succeeded. So we can now go ahead and publish this release. That will then trigger another build on AppVeyor. So if we go back over and look at the history, the one distinction now is that this build here that just happened was a normal build in the sense that it didn't have a tag associated with it. This second build does have a tag associated with it. So if we were to look at the code in the build script, then if there's a tag present, other stuff happens, and that other stuff is the deployment stuff. So I've said this before in the stream that this is essentially a rebuild of the one that's just happened. So there's actually some duplication of effort in that one. So that's a failure on cake.recipe that I'm using. What we should really do on this tagged build is just use the assets that were generated as part of the last build. But it hasn't been enough of a problem or enough of a concern to change that yet. So it's a known issue. It's not ideal, and the CI/CD purists will probably would tell me that this duplication of the build is unnecessary and a little bit unwieldy. But I'm a little bit pragmatic when it comes to these things. That it's not the end of the world. So that's my opinion. So if this one happens and this one succeeds, and there's no reason it shouldn't succeed, we should see a message pop up here to say that it was submitted to NuGet and this is where you can find it. And if it is, it'll send out a tweet. And also, if we go to nuget.org and we look for Cake.Ember, really gonna have to get Synergy to play ball. If we look at Cake.Ember, we'll see it appear there as well. So Arthur, I want to say Artur in the chat room is pointing out that Arch Linux is not yet on the list of supported OSs, as libgit 2 sharp does not support it yet. Okay, so that's what I thought. We got it working. Updated git version config file to use the installed. Ooh. I'm going to let you guys have a chat, because that sounds like it could be a potential workaround for git version not working on Arch Linux. So where's this build getting to? So we'll look down here. So we're getting there. So it's just at the test stage. Oh, that's not good. Ooh, that's not good at all. That was unexpected. That was unexpected. So the test step did execute correctly last time. But it failed. It failed when it was tagged, but that shouldn't have caused any difference. Let's have a look and see what the error was. Could not load file or assembly system.componentModel.primitives. Why not? I know what I want to do, and I just want to run that again, because that error makes no sense to me. So I think I'm just going to run it again and see what happens. This is the CI/CD equivalent of switch it off and switch it on again. Because there's no reason that that shouldn't have worked. Let's see what happens. So far today, this hasn't really been the best display of how to get things done in your lunch hour, because we've run into a couple of roadblocks here. But I'm still reasonably optimistic that the end of my lunch, which is in 14 minutes, will have at least pushed out a new version of one Cake.Addin. Let's see what happens this time around when it gets to the test stage. Let's have a look. So there's DupFinder. So the tests should be next, I think, after that. Yeah, so the build worked, the restore worked. DupFinder should execute with not finding any duplicates, which is what we want. So Kim's asking on the chat as to whether the cache was cleared. So let's look back at the history. So this is the build that worked on the master branch. This is the build that failed on the master branch. And this is the current one. So this one worked, and it restored the cache. When that one, and on this one, oops, put that back up here, it restored the cache. And on this one, so they're all restoring from the cache. So the after inspect code finishes is when it will then do the unit tests. Oh, sorry, I see your question, Kim. Was the cache cleared when you initially pushed the changes? Short answer to that is yes, it should have been. Because if we look at the recipe.cake, then in here, oh no, sorry, not the recipe.cake. If we look in the appveyor.yaml file, which is going to be here, then the I see no no is the answer. But I don't see why that would cause problems with the unit tests. Because look, that's just worked. Okay, so I'm putting that down to a glitch in the matrix there, because that worked, having made no changes and just clicking go again. So yeah, so if we go over to Contrib Gitter, we'll see that it's just pushed out a notification to say that the Cake.Ember add-in has been released, which is what we wanted. It sent out a tweet to Cake-Contrib to say that it's been added. Now, the only slight problem with those is that they're a lie. So it's not actually available yet, because some of you will know that NuGet.org has an ingestion period now. So as soon as you do the push, which is what we just did, which is what generated those tweets and those Gitter messages, it's not immediately available. NuGet now has this kind of time slot now where it's doing some checks. It's running some virus checks, it's doing some other sanity checks to make sure that the contents of that NuGet package are not malicious. So it won't actually appear on here until it goes through that process and until it gets indexed and can appear on NuGet.org. So that message there in Gitter, in that tweet, are a little bit of a lie. But I have a plan, or I have a working hypothesis on how I might be able to make it so that it will only send those out once the package is actually available. But the end result is that it will be there. So 0.4 is now available, or will now be available on NuGet, so you can consume that within your builds. So the only thing that's really left to do to finish off what we've just done is to jump back to the develop branch. And we should merge synergy. We should merge that release branch into develop as well. Now, that shouldn't actually have any changes, so this should essentially be a no-op. It should be nothing. It's already up to date. And the final thing there is to delete that release branch then, because we don't need it anymore. 0.4.0. And we're done. So that's the release and the update of Cake.Ember to use the latest version of Cake has been done. It has... Okay, so let's go back. So Kim's saying that the did clear the cache. So which build is that you're referring to there, Kim? Let's just bring that up. Copy to clipboard. Let's just see if we're talking about the same one. So that was the initial develop branch build. Okay, so that's fine, but that to me wouldn't explain why successfully ran unit tests, successfully ran unit tests, didn't run unit tests, or failed to run unit tests, and then worked again. So I think there's a glitch in the matrix there. I'm not entirely sure what happened. That's unfortunate, but I don't think that was anything that we did. It has adopted package validator / package verifier. That's a question from Maurice. To an extent, yes. So what Maurice is referring to there is on chocolatey.org. So chocolatey.org is a for anyone who uses Chocolatey. I'm part of the Chocolatey team. Chocolatey, when it's ingesting new packages that are submitted to it, it takes every package and runs it through these things called package validator and package verifier. So those are automated processes that will ensure that that package installs correctly the underlying application that is meant to be sent to it. It will also send the contents of those packages to VirusTotal to ensure that there's no malicious content in any of those files, and then it will be human moderated. That's something that was turned on chocolatey.org quite a while ago, but more recently on NuGet.org they're starting a similar process. So yes, there's an ingestion queue now that it runs through some sanity checks. I know at least one of those is a virus related one. The reason I know that is because quite a well-known individual on Twitter wrapped up a virus riddled assembly and sent it in a NuGet package just to test it out, and he got a nice email back from the NuGet team saying, please don't do that again. So it does work. And then Kim is suggesting that the message should maybe be updated to package is almost ready. That's probably a good idea. So that would be if we go to GitHub and look at Cake-Contrib, then maybe what we should do just in the last couple of minutes of my lunch is we will... Seriously. We'll maybe create an issue to that effect on cake.recipe. So let's go in here and create a new issue that says change wording on messages to indicate that me and Synergy are going to fall out. NuGet packages are almost ready, and we'll say as per discussion on Twitch. And that would be suggestion from, I don't know. Okay, so let's do, that would be an improvement, I think. So if we go up here and say improvement, and yeah, let's just submit that. Okay, so we'll do that, and I think so I've got 6 minutes left, and thankfully my VM hasn't rebooted again. But I'm not going to jump into doing another Cake add-in because I simply don't have time. So I need to go and have some lunch. But the process that I've just went through is one that is being tracked. So if we go up to here and look at the home repository on Cake-Contrib, then one of the Cake community members who goes by a handle of Jericho, I'm struggling to remember what his first name is, his actual first name is, but Jericho has created this thing that he calls the add-in discoverer, and periodically, I think it's twice a day, it scans NuGet.org to see whether Cake.Addins are updated to the latest recommended version. So if I go back to there, then you'll see that he has audits for 26, 28, and 33. So each one of those are versions of Cake that had known breaking changes contained within them. So what Jericho does as part of his automation process is he is monitoring those add-ins that are on NuGet.org, and he has a report that then says these add-ins need to be updated. So if we go back into the 33 one, then if we search in here for Ember, then you'll see that there was a red arrow here indicating that Cake.Ember needed to be updated because the recommended one is 33. So Cake.Email is an add-in that Jericho himself maintains. So he's updated this one to be 33 and compliant with the suggestion that we use that one. So Cake.Ember was one of the ones that needed to be updated. So that's and that's one that I own. So I chose to get that work done. So the next time that add-in discoverer runs, this report will be updated and obviously indicate that it's now using the right version of Cake. And yeah, so there's work to be done. So easeviewskater.net, that's one of mine that I need to get updated. And then what I'm going to start after I've done my ones is politely making suggestions to other Cake maintainers to get them updated as well. But we have this system in place where we can monitor that and see how well that process is going. So I'm going to say that's me done for the day. So thank you for coming along. I hope this has been useful. What I will point out again for those that are maybe new to the stream, I have this live streams repository on my GitHub, which aims to have a list of upcoming things that I'm going to be working on. So the one today was updating add-ins for Cake. Monday's one, or maybe on Monday's one, we'll be finishing off the Cake website deployment infrastructure that we started last week. We ran into some issues with Azure that meant we didn't quite get finished, but Matthias might be available to join me on that stream again. So look out for that. And I will update this with additional topics that I'm going to be working on or things that I'm going to be targeting. And as always, if there is anything that you want to have discussed on the stream or have ideas about what you think will make good suggestions, then feel free to raise an issue here and we can discuss them. There's still some suggestions in there that need to be implemented, so feel free to add some in there and I can get to them as soon as possible. So that's it from me. Thank you all for coming, and hopefully see you again in the next stream. Thank you very much.